Good morning, afternoon, evening, night. Welcome to the Shotgun Thoughts broadcast, the lone broadcast by myself, done completely in my own stead. I do apologize with that being the case that pretty much when I'm out of commission, everything everything kind of slows down. And the first 2 weeks of the month, I have to take my injection for MS and it totally knocks me out. It leaves me with very little that I'm able to do. I'm exhausted. So, fortunately that in combination with losing my phone, getting it stolen, they're just things are slowing down a little bit, but we're looking to pick up the pieces where they lie. I've tried to make some improvements on the show on the channel and edit where I can and start to do a little bit more of that. Um, but yeah, this is all being done by me, so I do apologize for the lack of quality or consistency. Something I will definitely be hoping to address in the future with backlogs, at least able to get the schedule done as I would like. But anyway, would like to get into what I meant to go over last week, which is family. And considering the time of the year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it is the giving spirited holiday all Americans either love or hate. And want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and hope everything goes well. But these time of the year can be a bit chaotic for sure, not only with just the gift giving, but everything going on with the family and mother-in-laws and all those types of things getting involved where they usually wouldn't. And sometimes things can be very difficult with family. I know there's there's a back and forth in my family, of course. I think as most people have, there's disagreements and there's complications that ultimately sometimes you want to give up on people, and things are very complicated, so you can't just always say you can't give up on family, because there does come a point where somebody can be so toxic and so disruptive and just bringing bad things with them that sometimes you do have to separate and kind of close these people off. But what I always like to say is to forgive but to not forget, because that's how you can end up in the same situation. But you also don't want to carry with you any animosity and any ill will towards these people, because especially when they are your parents or a very close family member, sometimes it's just how people are. And you really have to take into account people's pasts and what their upbringing might have been. And you give people a shot and you don't give up on them, but at the same time you do have to give people space, especially when they use that space you're giving them to have a platform to pick into your life, to trickle these toxic things and whatever it might be, manipulation. You have to separate yourself from these things, but it still is family, and that's where I try never to give up, and I always try to do the more difficult thing, which is to do the right thing. And that's especially with your parents, to sometimes it comes full circle, and it should, where your parents raise you, and in most circumstances you are at the very least having it better than your parents. And in many cases where it's maybe not the family you would like, there are reasons for that. More than likely your parents came from something very similar to what you're experiencing. And again, you're not you're not meant to just ignore these things, and it's not an excuse for their behavior. But at the same time, just having not to experience other levels of destitution and depravity that your parents have experienced, because again, you're coming from a position where you're standing on your parents' shoulders no matter what. They 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 created you. They created the space for you to be born, and whatever that might be, it's still a blessing, and something that a lot of parents can be very entitled in that sense because you belong to them. But at the same time, you are an individual, and there is personal responsibility on both parts, the parent and the child, where these things do come full circle. And at some point, you will be the one to teach your parents. And it doesn't take very long. If your parents did a good job, then or at least in some way, if you were able to learn and right those wrongs, at least in your head, to know what your parents are doing wrong, then by your teenage, by your 20s, your young adult life, you should be able to challenge them and almost fight for your individuality, because there's that push and pull where if your parents are not respecting, or your authority figures are not respecting the boundaries that you should have as you age in life, you have to be given your own autonomy. You have to learn your own lessons. You have to experience things on your own to be able to grow in life and have your own personal wisdom that you're able to enrich all your experiences to come. And oftentimes that's the best things that parents do, whether they're right or wrong in their upbringing of you. You should be studious enough and aware enough that you can at least make a positive difference on all of those things by putting your input where like, pick your battles, but giving your input onto things that are being done wrong to you is important. I had two older brothers, and it made it a lot easier to kind of beat our parents down in the things that were just a little bit unruly or a little bit overbearing, you know. And there is that push and pull. I had a lot of friends that did not have good relationships with their father. By the time I graduated high school, they were already in the military. So, sometimes you do need to get away. But I don't think it's worth just throwing that all in the garbage. It's almost like being an atheist as opposed to being agnostic. Sometimes with your parents, there's very little to redeem, but oftentimes, at the very least, there's love. Your parents love you. They should. And that's worth trying to fight for. And you just cannot overdo it. Give that space and respect the relationship that you do have. And if you understand that there's only a certain limit to what you can give before it starts to get bad, then that's what you give. You call them up, you say hello, how's it going, wish you well, love you, miss you, if applicable. And things get a little toxic, you go on your merry way. You tell dad, mom, you tell them, listen, this is not what I called you for, or whatever, and you hang up the phone. You kind of, you have to work with things in the best way possible, because if there's one thing that was asked for in the Bible, was not to respect your parents, but to honor them. And there is a difference in that. You can, not to say you can show disrespect, but that's part of the package. Your parents opted in for some type of deal, in a sense. They agreed to make you. Whether they intended to or not, they were supposed to decide on this before your birth, before you were born. So them blaming you for anything in that regard is very illogical. when, it was up to them and they had made that decision. Either way, the decision is meant to be made before you have sex, before you have a child, if that's what you want to do. Sometimes it is an accident, but either way, own up to it one way or the other. So sometimes that may be the case, and either way, it doesn't always have to be. It could be something as simple as a mother-in-law, you know, kind of ruining your side of everything. Like, you might have a perfect relationship with your wife, but the mother-in-law or the father-in-law, it's just unruly, something that like can't be dealt with. But you do have an effect, you do have an ability to affect the situation, and that is with your loved one, your wife, so you really, if you have to work through them, that's how you do it. You be patient, and you try to get through to whoever might be closest to the problem, and you start to address it there, maybe make them more aware of the situation that's bothering you. And you really just can't give up on these things, because especially with family, those are the only real people that are always there for you. There's a lot of people in your life as you grow that just come and go, even family members as well. But still, blood is thicker than water, and it's something that is really important, because that's like the first line of defense should anything go bad, or should you have to reach out, or just any type of experience like that where you might need help, or might need somebody else. Close friends, family, most important thing, and you shouldn't give up on people. There's plenty of people that I have left by the wayside, and that's just because it's not reciprocal, and these mostly are not family members. you know I don't have the mind to give up on family, even when they're completely unreasonable. I just think it's almost like how women have a friend for everything. It's like that. It's like, you have family members, you don't need to involve them in everything in your life. And if there's somebody you don't like, then, you just have to deal with them accordingly. And if that means, talking to them once a year when you see each other, then that's it, you know. But can't take with you all of these problems and difficulties that you really cannot affect or change in any way. You could process them differently and react to them differently. That's the best you're going to be able to do for the most part. Or just separate yourself entirely, which I don't think is the healthiest option in many cases, for sure. And then going back to family, but it's something that is politically being targeted and has been for the longest time. Any type of traditional family structure is really coming under fire. And there's a reason for that, because, you know, Alex Jones was recently on Tucker Carlson, and it was a pretty good episode to really go over everything that's kind of been going on the past like 30 years. And in general, things are getting to the point where the cities are just coming under complete political control. And anybody with a traditional mind is thinking to go out to the country and live in the countryside and everything like that. And it is good, but like Alex Jones was saying, you really have to have one foot in both, because the minute that all the traditional people and, the ones who are kind of keeping normalcy together separate themselves and move out from the cities, then it's very easy for them to just take control over the sectors of industry that are producing everything. These cities are where everything is coming from for the most part, except for the food. And even that is something that they're starting to get control of. So, moving out to the country, separating yourself entirely from all this shit that's going on, it's not necessarily the best thing, because it's like you're just leaving, you're running away from your problems. And eventually it is going to come for these people in the countryside, and it's going to be even harder because they have all they do is have the land, and that's it. The land and the food. So really need to think about both of these things, keep one foot in both, and you know, it's gotta be community oriented. In that sense, socialism is important, but we're not talking about the lack of private ownership of things. We're talking about community where people really need to stop going to the government, to these big corporations. In this country, we used to have that turnover where the free market drove these bigger companies out of existence eventually. And it it was intended for that to happen, but it never really did. You have these giants that establish themselves and they never go away. They continue to buy up the competition. There's no room for, well, the little guy can pop up, but it's very difficult for these companies to go beyond that breakthrough point, because the minute that they do, they just get bought up. Look at Tom's of Maine, the toothpaste, fluoride free, bought by Clorox. Same thing with Burt's Bees, the natural chapstick. It's like these companies, they end up selling out, and they have better ideas, they have better things for the market, and there's a reason why they do so well. Burt's Bees, Tom's of Maine, there's a reason they do so well, but then they get bought out, and the whole reason they existed in the first place just slowly fades from memory as, like, Colgate puts it under its wing and then keeps it pretty much exactly the same forever and just continues to buy up these new things, and like the market never moves. Things never actually progress to where they should be. Like all the fluoride coming out of the toothpaste, period. Why is it in there? Even with the drinking water, why is there fluoride in the drinking water as much as there is? There's just a ton of these things that somebody might address at some point, a company, and then they just get bought out by the bigger guy. Companies need to stop doing this, because this is what has enabled Disney, Budweiser, all of these companies to get to this level of arrogance where they're not even listening to the market anymore. They're doing what they want, and they're trying to influence the country in a way that's like, no, dude, you make beer, stay in your corner, and that's it. Like, dude, this is why we let you exist, is to make beer, not to push transgender activists in our face and shit like that. So I don't know, man. The Americans really need to start taking back this country in the way that was meant to happen, with our wallet. That's all we need to do, is just speak with the money. That is it. Stop buying shit from these companies that are just ruining everything. They're absolutely ruining everything. And it's like, that message needs to be out there as well. We're tired of these people selling out. Like, fight that fucking Colgate Clorox shit and keep your toothpaste brand, so that they're not deforming your product. I mean, look at Tom's of Maine now. There's like 2 out of 10 types of the toothpaste that have fluoride in them now. They all have fluoride, most of them. So it's just ridiculous. Anyway, I'm losing my mind. I thank you for listening, and we'll be back as often as possible. Appreciate your patience. Thank you very much. If you like this, like, subscribe, share it with the fellow. Take care. Thank you, everybody.